I just thought I'd get Sven and Anna on just to educate us a little bit more in all of the toxins that are foods and the heavy metals and just what we're being exposed to currently in today's society. So I thought I'd get you guys on, being the experts, and just to pick your brains a bit more. And also, really, what I want to do is try and offer people a solution, because it just seems to be very fear-based, or everything. You can't eat this, you can't have that, you can't. And I mean, even I'm struggling to see where we're finding our nutrients, proper vitamins and things in our food now. And I just find it really concerning. So I've wrote down a few questions, and I just thought
Thank you for bringing us on. Right at the start of that, we've all got to live. We've all got to enjoy things. You know, me and Anna live on a toxin-free lifestyle as much as possible, but there's still pet hates. We went to Buku's yesterday and had a milkshake with dairy and sugar in it and sweets. But unless you stop living, you know, and you can't deprive children of it, but it comes to the point when, like, even now, our youngest, our 9-year-old Thomas, he says he's looking at labels and he's mindful of what he puts in his body. You know, when you've got ingredients in things that are clearly there that you question, like glucose syrup, maltodextrin, which is in everything now. I mean, who doesn't love cheese cheddars? Right?
Also in crisps as well, you've really got to watch all the crisps. The main brands will say
it's in every. You find our food chain is slowly becoming, now you really have to look at the E numbers, the additives. There's a lot of heavy metals in, like we see in the news with fruit juices and stuff. It's crazy, really, really is. So yeah. Thank you for having us on.
So so I think the first question is, what is heavy metal toxicity? You know, just, it's all right, I say it to people, but it's like, what is it? Where do we get it from?
There's a lot of misunderstanding from the perspective of heavy metal toxicity, and people, you know, and we get it from both sides. You know, my body can do detox, blah blah blah.
Bodies are capable of detoxing, but it can't for how we're overloaded with everything these days.
Yeah, and heavy metals are essentially, you know, the elements that we know about, like aluminum, mercury, that are in the world, that, you know, around us in abundance. In some places in the world more so, depending on what you consume and what you eat on a daily basis determines how much of an exposure you are. So if you're a fish eater, like if you eat a lot of sushi and things like that and swordfish, then you're naturally going to be exposed to a lot of mercury. If you've got dental amalgams, you're going to be exposed to mercury. You know, there's research online. I mean, a lot of the stuff we talk about is, we don't spout anything out. We look at studies, we look at research, we're connected to a lot of doctors and people in the holistic space that share a lot of what we found. So heavy metals, essentially, the reason they get into our body, and a lot of people don't understand why they get into our body and why they become a problem, is because it all starts from one thing: deficiencies. So the root of it all is a deficiency in the body. So most kids today, I think you'll agree with us, Allie, most children, most adults do not get enough vitamins and minerals anymore. We just don't. So what we see happen is, with the cells specifically, so on a nano scale, metals are able to hijack cells because of basically the mineral depletion. So the minerals aren't there, and then they get in, and it's called, if you look it up, it's actually called what's the word? A massive uptake. Like it draws up into the cell. And that's how metals become a problem. So a lot of people say, well, get the metals out, but I say, but it's really important that once you get them, start to remove the metals, you get the nutrients back in, which leads us to another problem. Like, where do we get our nutrients from? We just covered right at the start of this that we don't get enough goodness anymore. Our food's compromised, you know, even fruit and veggies and herbs. Like, you've got to be really careful with teas, etc. You know, fluoride and all that lot of stuff, the plastics, microplastics in tea bags. You've got to be really mindful, haven't you?
Definitely, like the herbs as well. You've got to be careful that they don't come from.
Well, we had a right fit with our local farm shop. They've got organic produce, but we've been buying this ginger and we realised it's sourced from China.
It's like,
the Chinese are bad.
China to here. When I've even looked it up now, we can actually grow it ourselves here.
So that's how, you know, heavy metals become a problem, and it all depends on the person, where their exposure is. I mean, some people are unknowingly exposing themselves. Like if you go for routine hospital appointments, right? I'm not saying people shouldn't, but if people go for like an MRI, which is where they put you in that big ring and they light your cells and your veins and your brain, whatever it is, up like a Christmas tree. Well, to do that, more often than not, they stick a dye inside you, which makes you glow up. Now that dye is toxic, right? People don't realize it's gadolinium, but I know people, without going into too much detail, that have suffered the after effects of MRI. So really, it all depends on exposure, and not to mention something which you've talked about before, Allie, is MTHFR, which is where essentially their bodies aren't able to A, methylate, and B, they're not able to detox. So you get someone with MTHFR and they get exposure to mercury, and we've met plenty over the last 4 years. They really struggle to get the metals out. Their bodies can't get them out, and they're unwell. They're poorly people. Doctors don't look at metal toxicity. They don't look at parasites.
It's a minefield, and people are becoming just so so poorly now, systems in the children is, you know, I mean, I always just used to go off sugar and say, like, you know, sugar on the brain is like ADHD, sugar on the teeth is sugar on the eyes is glaucoma, that kind of thing. And going for this, but then obviously, like you've explained, now everything is, you know, genetically modified, has nanoplastics and everything else, and the heavy metals. So it's like getting people to sort of understand, like, what, and I know, like you said, you've got to be careful when you're saying about foods, but it's sort of what are the things to avoid, really, that sort of contain the most.
I'm not going to go into names here because obviously this will be put onto YouTube, but obviously there's a certain brand of coffee with white cup, say no more, that if you look at the actual ingredients of most of their beverages, if you call them that, I don't even class them as food, I class them as poison. They've got mold in them. They've got high amounts of fructose corn syrup. Fructose corn syrup is essentially the worst of the glucose syrup. It's the one that's genetically modified from corn, along with mold, pesticides, microplastics leaching from the container into it. And then there's the question of the actual cleanliness of the water within it. And it really is crazy. So it really is the food that we eat. Even organic, I don't trust organic in itself because, you know, where did it come from? Where's the sourcing? You know, even an organic produce grown in the ground will still draw up into it naturally by its very definition. By it growing will naturally draw up, you know, toxins and metals into its plant.
Because the toxins are coming from the air as well, so it's going into the ground.
They are.
I went into one of the supermarkets and I was picking up the packages in there, and it literally says on the side of the packets now that it can cause attention deficit disorders, and, you know, a lot of things were made from genetically modified corn, and it's like, what are we even eating? You know, is it edible?
I saw a great quote the other day. Someone posted that if supermarkets have got a healthy section, well, what's the rest of it? Anything that's got a shelf life, and but it comes back to, we've got to survive, we've got to live. Like, you know, there's certain brands of chocolate bars that, you know, we consume that as of late we've realized actually they've changed. And I'm gonna be open and transparent now on camera. Our youngest Thomas, these last month or two, he's been struggling. He's been having meltdown, and we're like, what's going on? We detox, and we've realized that the crisps and the things that he's been eating, they've changed the ingredients, and they've literally that. And I think what's going on with the cellular around here, and I think I can say it here, right, that we've had stuff done around here, say no more. It's not just one thing, it's a combination of multiple things: food, air, water. But their kids are really struggling, and we get it a lot with a lot of parents. And that's why you might have noticed with our content, even Allie, the last 2 to 3 weeks, someone actually said in our company, you guys aren't loud enough, you're not loud enough for your content. I'm like, okay, I'll take that as constructive criticism. So we've gone harder, and we've really focused in on children now, and to help children, because we've got kids that, like you, are suffered. Jack's obviously got sensory issues. Jack at one point in his life couldn't even look at us hand to eye. They try to have a conversation with Jack, and he was like, he couldn't look at you, and he does get
his writing as well. We tried to pick it up at school before we started homeschooling. Then he got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and then it got brushed under the carpet. Now, since we've been home, given him the detox and everything, he is so much better, and he's able to write clearly. It's amazing.
It's really important that we can calm what's going down in their heads all the time, and it breaks my heart to see the children just suffering so chronically with mental health conditions at such early ages. You know, this was not a thing 20 years ago like this, the way now. Clearly, the powers that be or whatever are allowing all of this stuff in, so it's really down to us to make the choice.
Yeah, and that's why I say, and if any parents watching this, the simplistic approach, there's no curing involved. Like, I had someone on a TikTok say yesterday claiming to cure, and I'm like, no, there's no curing whatsoever. Like, metals in the body, in the brain, they have a negative impact on us. They cause hormone problems. You've had women with hormone, like menopause, perimenopause, all sorts of problems. Metals disrupt the way in which our body works, even down to the thyroid. Now, we did a post, our company's released a thyroid blog the other day that talked about how heavy metals have such a profound impact on the thyroid. My sister had her thyroid removed years ago. I wish I knew now what I knew then, what I know now, because I might be able to save her from having it removed. But specifically with children and us, what happens is, even as adults, like, I always explain it like, if you can imagine a circuit board, right, and you sprinkled metal filings on it and it had electricity through it, what would happen to it? It would blow up, you know? So when you introduce metals into the brain, it causes neurotransmitter issues on the brain. So where do we see that as? Processing issues, ADHD, ASD, and where did those issues stem from? Like, I've had this debate with many times with people. Like, they say that metals aren't the cause. I say they are, because it starts from the womb. Like, tattoos are a big source of heavy metal toxicity. They cross that layer, the protective layer of the skin, and they end in the blood. It all depends on the person whether they can detox. I mean, but the thing is, mums and dads, like, they're doing their best. Like you said, then they're doing their best with what's been provided in the shops, you know, products, makeup. Like,
it's overwhelming for people now, and are so massively discontent in the educational system them and with what around them, and they get, you know, the technology put in front of them and the high sugared foods, and it's just a concoction for disaster is what I see. But it's, you know, it's what they're all doing, and it's the movement.
Like it's really disrupting and breaking up the family unit. We've noticed personally in our town here in Hay and Cornwall, a lot of people that were like high school sweethearts and couples after what? I mean, not going to mention names. We know the two, don't we, Anna? How long was that person married for?
I don't know, 25 years.
So they were like that. They were like a rock. And then like we've gone through the last 3 years and what's happened. We've had so many stresses and strains on society. I think we can give that without going into too much detail. Things have really changed in what we consume. Products have changed. The cost of living's gone up. Real stress on the family unit has gone up. And we've seen people, it's happening, and kids are suffering from it.
I mean, how I always think of it is everything is just disconnected now.
Yeah.
You know, like the mushrooms, you should all be connected together, helping each other out, you know, steering on, not pulling each other down. But we've got a real wild situation going on at the minute. And, you know, it does need a lot more talking about, because people just are deeply unwell and unhappy, aren't they? The reason why I thought you guys are absolutely brilliant is because you're just so positive as well. That positive message that you give across to people, as well as all of the information and the education, you know, it's really just trying to raise the vibration, which is what I'm all about. And obviously people were electrical magnetic beings, a toroidal field and that immune system, and I try and explain things, and that's a little bit too far-fetched for people, but yeah, it's definitely why we're affected by all this stuff. And you know, we have so much, like you said, there's no prevention, like in the doctor, if you went to your GP to check your nutrients and your levels and see what you're deficient in and stuff like that. And I mean, that's just absolutely needed.
It is. I mean, if you look at, the company we're with puts out so much education with regards to that. You know, they talk about nutrient deficiencies, but if we look at decades past, you know, 20, 30, 40 years ago, the nutritional content of food, and you're going to need to go online and find nutritionists and stuff and find studies and resources that they've done, and they do actually talk about, you know, the nutritional content of an apple and an orange. Let's just forget about the toxic load in them, which is a given, that's increased, but the nutritional core ingredients has diminished. The minerals have diminished. Then you get the people that say we get our minerals from water. That's why we distill. We don't get enough minerals from our water. Most of the minerals and trace minerals that should come from foods, which is crazy, isn't it? And which is why we use a Fulvic, because it gives us a broad base. And there's other things you can do, magnesium blend, like we've got some stuff here, but I think we've all got cupboards of stuff which we use. Because the alternative,
magic.
the alternative is going to the doctors and no, thank you. I'd rather not.
I think a lot of the things with the doctors, obviously they're very good for certain things, but you know, when it's certain things like pain and depression and stuff like that, you can end up in a vicious cycle, and you end up with more side effects than you started with, and then you're taking something to counteract that it's stripping it all back and starting again, I think sometimes. But so the next sort of question is, obviously, because I know that you guys can eliminate all these things, obviously, just to speak a bit more about that as well.
Yeah, just coming back to the section a second ago, you'd be surprised the amount of people we've met over the years where they add and add and add and add. They're always adding this. They have this problem. They add that. And we just say to them, stop adding, stop. And the amount of times that we'll do like a review, like what they consume. They might have 10 bottles of supplements in their cupboards. Maybe one bottle is okay and the rest will be toxic and have synthetic ingredients, etc. So a lot of stuff is, again, like we talked about food, but there's also a lot of other toxic synthetic ingredients in supplements a lot of people use. So people assume that they're doing okay. They're not. They're actually. So yeah, anyway, what was your question again? Sorry.
Just about sort of what solutions are there, and you know, what do you do sort of to help people when they have got too much heavy metal toxicity and stuff like that, especially children and things like that.
The first point, you know, is to start remove, right? Stop adding. It's reducing that toxin burden where possible. That you know, if anyone's looking for any advice without buying any products or doing anything, it's that if you can imagine that scale, right? At the moment, with the world and way in which it is, our bodies are constantly in this state. Like where the level of saturation of toxins and pesticides and chemicals on our bodies is so high that it's about moving it that way and back in our favor. And that can be done by, as we discussed with the labels, looking at ingredients. We know they're putting bugs in food. If you've got a chemical name on an ingredient on a label and you don't know what it is, Anna does it. She stands in the shops and she say, no, that's no good. She had one lady looked at it the other day, thought she was mad. And she said, actually, she looked at the lady, didn't you? And you said, this ingredient's toxic. And the woman was like, oh, I never knew that. So it is, as you said, it's about educating people.
I started looking into aspartame, obviously, in all the Red Bulls and things like contribute to onset onset of Parkinson's disease and things like that. I think Michael J. Fox spoke about it from Coca-Cola, but so many bad things that, you know, that we're of. And I think...
Alzheimer's obviously is now coming out as being actually type 3 diabetes, which is actually insulin resistance on the brain. What's that from? Glucose syrup more than anything. I mean, there are natural alternatives, you know, like coconut sugar and stuff like that, but if you've really got to have sugar. But so yeah, go back to that. So it's to remove that toxic load from the body. And if you really must, and if you can't, like, you know, if you've still got certain things you must have, like, you know, and I'll be honest, we've got customers that we've helped over the years that they eat takeaway all the time, but they'll still use the detox because it's helped them. So the first thing we use is this product, Pure Body Extra. It's a cellular detox. It's micronized, it's daily, it's safe and gentle for all ages. There's no after effects, no side effects or anything like that. You know, it doesn't affect any medication, but that will go into our bodies, into the cells within seconds, and it will, through a process called cationic exchange, it will attract and trap and remove toxin. And the attraction process is quite epic because what it does is like magnetism. It will go into the body, and if you've got a piece of mercury or aluminum, it will attract it, trap it into its unbreakable bond. And the unique thing about that is that there's no mineral depletion. So there are other things you can use, like you can use charcoals, you can use bentonite clays, etc. But the things with them is they're not good for long-term use. You know, charcoal and clays can dehydrate, they can strip goodness as well, and they don't kind of work in the same way as zeolite. Zeolite's got like
they can redistribute in your body, can't they? That's why you get the effect.
Yeah, and then obviously the way zeolite works is it's like a honeycomb cage, and it will go in and it will attract mercury, and in its cage is either a piece of calcium, magnesium or potassium, and it will take the bad part and put the good part in its place. So you'll always have that cationic exchange, which is super cool, and then your body will pee it out through your kidneys.
Yeah. Like you can, I don't know if I'm right here, you'll tell me if I'm right or wrong. You can't really overdose on that because your body pees it out. That right?
No, you can't. It comes from the CEO's mouth that if you're going to go through like any medical intervention, so if we've got people that have got mercury fillings and are about to go and have it done with a holistic dentist, or if they're about to go and have a medical procedure, you know, as long as we've had that conversation, making them aware, but obviously we're not doctors, so we can't advise them to not have medical procedures, but just to say, hey, look, have you seen this resource? And that's the kind of angle we play it at when people's doing stuff with like MRIs. We say, have you seen this resource? You know, that, and it's like a scientific study that shows the effects of MRI on the body, because it gives people then an informed choice. And the amount of times that we've had people turn around and actually question them and say, do I actually need that dye? And they say, actually, no.
Right.
Sometimes I think with
I've had that done before when I had pneumonia.
Yeah, they just give it for the sake of sometimes, but sometimes depending on where they need to scan in the body, you don't actually need it. The amount of times we've had that happen and we're like, someone didn't have to have that dye. So that one's for the cellular side. So we've got a gut one here as well, which focuses on the gut, which is the same mineral, but it's just a larger particle size, so it doesn't pass through the intestinal lining, so it just go in through the gut, grab the toxins.
That's what I was trying to say this before about the good gut bacteria and it affecting the neurological system, because people can't, like, well, you know how, like, there was a lot of links when children were younger and they were lactose intolerant, and the ones that were lactose intolerant, a lot of them have ended up sort of like on the autistic spectrum and stuff like that. There seems to be a link, definitely to do with the good gut bacteria, a lot of it I've found, and things like that. So it's just not ready information for people to understand.
And that's the hard bit. It's helping one's mind to realise that what's happened, you know, that whatever the challenge may be that they're facing or a loved one's facing is no fault of their own. It's the fact that through the choices they've made unknowingly through life, if people knew that if I was eating this and taking that it would cause this, they wouldn't do it.
No, exactly.
You know, just wouldn't do it. It's questioning really what we put on our body and what we put in, coming to the fact that it's really, really critical now more than ever. You've got to get the metals out. That's the starting point. Like I had one customer yesterday that said, I want to buy all your detox, all your supplements, and I said, there's no point. You just need to get the detox to start. Why? Because you need to get the metals out first, because your body won't be in a good place to absorb any goodness in a toxic state.
But at least you're able to give people an outlet and something to fall on to get out of.
And you're right, it is giving people hope with positivity, because we see it all the time, and you can probably relate, and anyone else watching this, we see it with social media that there's a lot of doom and gloom, there's a lot of this, there's a lot of that, and it's like, how can we best serve not only ourselves, like, you know, love ourselves and show up, if we get drawn into that and we're to show up that way. So that's why we show up the way we do.
We want to keep our vibrations high.
People are in fear, acting out of, you know, fear. It make them unwell, you know, like I've explained a lot about this as well, like the mindset, you know. So if all generally the collective of people are very down vibrationally, then you know it's gonna just have a wave of every, you know, and it's really about reversing it. And you know, it is a massive mammoth task.
and it can be done.
But you know, we've got to shine our light and try and educate and just, you know, be the voice of reason in some cases, I suppose. in this crazy world that we're all a part of at the minute.
The starting block of it all is loving yourself, loving yourself, and then, how can you love other people and help other people if you don't love thyself, as they say. It's really important to look at people that love themselves and think they were, up themselves, but now I look at it and they truly love themselves for who they are, and that's a magical thing. It's when it's ego driven, when people lead with ego and they're better than them. We don't feel better than anyone else. We're just two normal people, and we did TikTok the other day, like, we just think we're normal, and someone said, no, actually not, you guys are amazing at what you do, and we don't realize it sometimes. We just love doing what we do, and like, we met you a while ago, and your books are incredible too.
Thank you. I think people have lost their self-worth, and they're just sort of in anything, and when you do have self-worth, you want to make the right decisions for yourself, and it's just, it has a knock-on effect. So it's really important that people don't go too hard on themselves in this current situation, because I think most people are struggling in some way or another now.
People are really looking for a better life, and like, our story where we came from 4 years ago. I was an engineer electrician, and I was just a mum, but we know just a mum is a big task in itself. That's the biggest job. But like, we always question things. We were right in the height of the pandemic, and then we, through health problems and wanting to protect ourselves at that current time, we found the DETOX, and it wasn't just that was the vehicle, like the door to a completely new life, a new path. That took a different fork in our trajectory, and then from that we started learning, connecting with people like you, and that, to us, that's been the biggest aspect, is the connections with people and making the friendships with people like yourself, and now obviously helping people with the health, and also teaching people how to escape the system, how to fire their boss, how to get out of the rat race. Because you touched on self-worth there. I feel that's one aspect that in the system, in the education system, in the traditional way of 9 to 5, people's worth is diminished. They're treated like crap. They don't feel they're good enough. They don't feel they've got that potential to do anything. And I have actually told a lot of people, we pour into so many, that you can do it. And the reason we've done what we've done is because we've just been consistent every day. We've done nothing fancy. Yeah, we do fancy videos, but when you look at the face of it,
in your truth, and it's become your calling and your purpose.
Like you.
And when that happens to you, you're obedient to it. And I just think, like, show up in the world as you want to be seen from that point on. It does change. Yeah, it's just about trying to do the right thing and be on the right side of this now, because and a lot of people are sort of head in the sand with a lot of things still, and and everyone goes at their own rate of understanding what's going on and things like that. But I think for me, my biggest drive is just the children, because I just see such change in the children, and I just think, what can we do? I'm just one person, I don't have a team of people. I've got a few people that help me with what I do, but it's just me. But it doesn't stop me from speaking out, because I just think, well, my light, and then someone else might want to talk about something, and then we all just have to stand in our authenticity and get on with it now.
And that's essentially why we started sharing and doing this with our company, is because it's not like bringing in lots of people. It's like everyone doing a little bit. It's a numbers game. It's like a colony of ants. The more and more people spread the message and share and help other people, for children, because that's where it's coming down to. We got to focus on. That's why we do what we do with the kids. So that's where it comes from, like the kids. And I agree with that. And
but it's amazing how they pick up, because even you take them in the shops and all now, and they will look at the labels and they're able to see.
It's gut wrenching though. It really is, because
it's sad that they've got to do that. It's really, really sad. But
it shouldn't be that way.
I think what's happening as well is all of these foods, like we say, we won't mention. We don't want to be sued.
No.
But I think a lot of the foods are super addictive. So the kids are actually addicted to this food. So like a lot of them sitting in the classroom for 6 hours, they are kind of withdrawing from all of the light.
Don't forget the lights.
Very, very bad. Yeah.
You're right about foods. It's crazy what it's doing to them, to the minds of children today, and it is addictive.
And then they just always want it. They're crazy.
And a lot of it, I think, is through regulation as well. Foods have gone down the route of non-sugar, sweetener based. So now there's certain foods out there that have had no sugar, so they've looked for chemical alternatives. So which is why they've gone down. And it is sneaky. It is sneaky, because like, you were a consumer and you looked what was it there? It was a packet of crisps, and if you picked up a packet of crisps and it said glucose syrup in it, you'd be like, why on earth is glucose syrup in crisps, right? Exactly. So what do you think they do? They don't put glucose syrup in it. They put its actual chemical name, maltodextrin.
And then no
one knows. No one questions it. Message to anyone today really is, start reading your labels. These corn-based snacks, maize, anything like that. Start looking at them.
Anything with caramel and
anything
like
with
that.
Caramel. Even, I won't say it. I can't say names, but just anything with like a syrup or glucose. I mean, do you remember them biscuits with the heart in the middle?
They never eat heart in the middle.
They used to actually have jam. Do you remember how jammy yummy yummy they were years ago. Well, if you've had them lately, they're very like bland and there's no taste to them. They're very like syrupy.
The crisps taste different. Like, you know, again, I was nearly going to say things, but yeah, it's everything, isn't it? It's bad.
Oh,
even in crackers.
Something we had over Christmas. We had this has changed in a year. So there's a red box of a brand of biscuits that begins with an R. Yeah. They've got glucose cereal in them. I've got one out with some cheese, and I'm like,
it's so sweet.
It's sweet, and it was like cardboardy. I'm like,
very depressing, isn't it? Yeah. Because you give your kids a nice home cooked meal, and everything be okay.
Well, this is where we're about to lead on to. Stop buying crap in shops. Make sourdough bread. Like no bread is good anymore. All of it's got crap in it.
Yeah, because even I got advice for our type 1 diabetes, if their sugars are low, give them a piece of white bread because there's so much sugar in white bread that it would actually bring their blood sugars up.
So we got sugar in white bread when they go to school. They've got processed fatty, monosaturated fatty spreadable butters. They've got ham with probably heavy metals and chemicals in it, salamis and all sorts of bits and bobs in it. Any sauces potentially that might have sugar in them. Then you've got fruit juices. Then you've got chocolate bars. So, you know, what was once a healthy meal.
Children can't concentrate in
school.
So hard for the parents to stop giving them.
Yeah, exactly.
And then hell to deal with. Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, and it's bad in the States. I was reading the other day that there's a certain, I don't know how many schools, I can't remember the exact numbers, but there's a fast food chain in the States, a big one, all right? I think they're actually making full dinners for schools.
I think it's going to take more than us three to stand up again.
Yeah, but it just takes this, and there's a lot of people on YouTube, you know. We decided to go all in on our YouTube channel end of last November. We dithered loads, and if anyone's wanting to get a message out like us, the reason YouTube is really important is because it's SEO, so it's search engine optimized. So unlike TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, you know, if you post any videos, once it's seen, it's gone in the depths of Facebook and thing. But if you do it on YouTube, it's linked to Google. So if people are searching for it, you know, that's why videos can go viral weeks, months, years after it's been posted. So definitely go on YouTube.
Yeah, I might put some of these ones that we do on YouTube. But that's what I'm just trying to connect with, you know, some of the people I know that I think that could bring some positivity around it.
And you're not alone. You know, your friends, you're not alone. And obviously, if anyone is interested that you know on the detox and wants to make steps towards that, obviously you can look after them as well, Allie. You know, you're a customer of it and you've used it yourself. So if anyone's watching this, give Allie a message and she'll look after you for that.
Brilliant.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so that's great. I think I've covered everything. I think we've covered everything, haven't we?
Yeah, I think we have. And it's just, the focus is on the labels and really what we put in our food. You know, detox and everything should be from whole foods where possible. And even then, like I said at the start, even whole foods, depending on where they're grown, where they're sourced. We've got a farm in Cornwall and they do actually ship UK. It's called Gusgar Farm. If you actually Google organic farms in Cornwall, there's a guy, and we've had many cups of tea with him and gone up there. He grows all his own produce, but he actually shouldn't say it, but he has a few choice words about farmers, even local to us, about the use of pesticides, in that he doesn't. And the first thing he said to me when we met him is he had this big bunch of lettuce, and he said to me, every night, me and my wife, we eat a bowl full of lettuce before we go to bed.
And it's helps him sleep, doesn't it?
Helps him sleep. Lettuce.
One of the things that I always is like a bugbear of mine is I just think of like the amount of land that every school has. Like, why have they not got a couple of polytunnels, like so the kids can actually get involved, grow in their own veg, and then enjoy the benefits of that for their lunch, like, you know, and then it's free. It's just the things that could be done, really, you know, just little things like that everywhere would make a massive difference. Again, I mean, Jamie Oliver came in and did all of this trying to get the school dinners good, and then it's all just gone.
And you've hit nail on the head there. Like the schools could do something like that with some of the land, and that could supplement the funds that they need as a school, and that could be put back in to help the kids, you know.
The schools are now academies, privately owned. They're not normal, you know, schools like we had.
They are businesses, you know. And it makes you mad because then they could take that produce and use it in the kitchen, you know, for the school meals and stuff.
And the children should learn how to grow their own food. It's a life skill that everyone should learn.
Not what the education system wants them to learn, though. And I think
learn about actual education, what we need to keep on.
They don't teach them to learn about money. They don't teach them to learn about entrepreneurism.
I don't want them to be critically thinking, that's for sure.
They don't want them like, and that's why I always question. You know, you're right. That's why I always question a lot of things with me for years. Yeah. And then when
it's outside the box now, time for that, isn't it?
And now it's like just we get up and we live for this every day. Out of the bed 6 a.m. every day, and just
I appreciate you both. That's
you
needed.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us on. Really appreciate it. And obviously, if anyone's got any questions, you can obviously ask Allie, and she can put you in touch with us, and we can help you with anything